This is Dateline News and Conversation. Before I introduce my guests, they both have been on the show before, I'd like to encourage you again to subscribe, join the Friends of Crimea, Friends of Russia Telegram channel. And you can do that by sending an email to the email address below. You will find a daily aggregation of all the news, not fake news, real, true news about Russia, Russia in international affairs, this conflict that's in Ukraine, the BRICS summit, and going forward from that, you will find troves of incredible, truthful articles and analysis on the Friends of Crimea, Friends of Russia Telegram channel. My guests tonight, two friends, they both were here in Crimea and they were in Russia back in April. I want to welcome to the show Dimitri Lascaris and Dan Kovalik. Welcome back to the show, my friends.
Thank you for having us, Regis.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Regis.
It's a pleasure. You two guys have been stalwarts. It seems to me you've been all over the place, commenting on, all kinds of things, but you were commenting on Russia and Crimea and the war in Ukraine. You were both here. You were right next door, and you got firsthand information. So what I'd like to do, first of all, and Dimitri, I'll start with you. You went back to Canada, and you really did a gutsy thing. You traveled, I think, I don't know if it was from one side of the country to the other, but you went kind of on a mission of peace. Can tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've got longstanding relationships with local peace groups around the country. I work with them on a variety of projects, including opposition to buying F-35s, Canada's government doing that, NATO opposition, opposition to the bombardment of Libya, and on and on. And they know me well. I know them well. We've had a wonderful time working together. And they were following closely my reporting from the Russian Federation in April. And when I came back, a representative of 44 peace groups from across Canada approached me, somebody I know very well, and for a long time his name is Ken Stone, and he asked me to do a national speaking tour. And initially they offered to, through fundraising, to pay me to do this, at least to defray my expenses, and I declined. I accepted the offer immediately for them to organize it, but I refused to accept any compensation for it because when you're advocating for peace in the current poisonous McCarthyite political environment that we have in the West, you got to be squeaky clean. And I just didn't want anybody to say that I was doing this for money. So I ended up going to 12 cities, which they organized, and they did a fantastic job. And it was a tidal wave, an absolute tidal wave of censorship that we confronted. We had 4 venues cancel on us at the last second because they were under intense pressure. But ultimately, we always managed somehow to secure an alternate venue. On one occasion, I actually had to go in my hometown of Montreal. They harassed the venue they found out where it was going to be 12 hours beforehand. They harassed it so much that the owners of the business thought that this was going to do serious damage to their business. We couldn't find an alternate venue, so I had to go and deliver my presentation in a park, which was a few blocks from my home. And there were some 30 protesters there, pro-Ukrainian protesters, calling me a liar and a fascist and other unsavory things during the entire time that I was delivering the presentation. So it was a very difficult and stressful experience, I have to admit, but I was very encouraged by the reaction we got from people who attended and by the levels of attendance. And I think there's a real hunger out there for a more honest conversation about this depraved proxy war.
Yeah. I'll come back to you again to follow up on some of your subsequent travels, and you've now found your way back to Greece. So Dan, I want to come over to you now. What were you up to when you returned to the United States? I know you went down to Nicaragua, but you've been really busy.
Yeah, well, first, by the way, I didn't, I didn't wait long before heading back to Russia. I went back to Russia through Estonia, and I made it back to Donetsk. where I spent some time and went to the war zone there. And that was an amazing experience. I had been in Donetsk in November. I got to go back this past June. I guess it was June or July. I'm losing track of time. And got to see more, talk to more people. And that was a very profound experience. Met amazing people there who have been, really fighting and defending themselves since 2014 against the government in Kiev in a war that, we're told didn't even start till last February. Of course, it's not true. And Donetsk City looked good. It was, it's periodically shelled by Ukrainian forces, but it's a teeming city nonetheless. It's vibrant. I made just a lot of great connections there. It was a amazing experience. I came back, and then within 2 days, I flew to Nicaragua, and I was there for the July 19th celebration, which is the anniversary of the Sandinista revolution that overthrew the U.S.-backed dictator Anastasio Somoza, and have been back home since. And I have been really concentrating on writing and speaking about my experiences in the Donbass.
So I believe you met with a mutual friend, a giant in the peace world, Brian Wilson, didn't you?
I absolutely did. I see him every time I go to Nicaragua. An incredible guy. I was, lucky to see him there. We sat very close to each other at the celebration. I also saw Max Blumenthal there, and Anya Parampil. I mean, it's a big reunion for a lot of us who support Nicaragua. And it was an amazing celebration. Now, I should say, as a Pittsburgher, what really excited me was that it was held at the brand new and even not yet finished Roberto Clemente baseball stadium.
Oh.
And of course, why is that important to someone from Pittsburgh? Because Roberto Clemente played for the Pittsburgh Pirates. There's a statue to him here in Pittsburgh, a bridge named after him, a museum. And he was an amazing ball player, but of course he was also a great humanitarian. And the Nicaraguans remember him and memorialize him because he died trying to bring aid to Nicaragua in 1972 after the earthquake, after he read that the aid that was going down there, including some that he had raised, was being stolen by Somoza. And he tragically died in an airplane explosion that occurred shortly after taking off from his home country of Puerto Rico. So anyway, that was neat to be there, to have, to be there to listen to Daniel Ortega speak in front of me, and then have the big paintings of Roberto Clemente behind me. I felt very much at home.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate what you two have been doing to spread the truth. And we all know how difficult it is. Dimitri had kind of a rough time in several places across Canada. The censorship and the abuse is getting worse and worse and worse. Dimitri, I'm going to come back to you. After Canada, you somehow got back to the European soil. Tell me about that trip and what was the purpose of it?
In 2018, at the end, one of the issues that I've been advocating about for years is the plight of the Palestinian people. And in 2018, I was a passenger on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, which is a humanitarian mission that tries to break the suffocating siege of Gaza, which has basically created an open-air prison for some 2 million people living in poverty. Unfortunately, my voyage was cut short in 2018 because between Cadiz, Spain, and Naples, Italy, I developed severe appendicitis, and they had to deliver me to a port in Africa, Algiers, where they performed an appendectomy. And it was a great experience in one sense, and that is because when I reemerged from the operating room, they told me I wasn't going to have to pay a dime because this was an act of solidarity with the Palestinian people. But it did stop me from going all the way to Gaza. So this year they mounted another mission, and they're doing it in two segments. The first segment traveled through Scandinavia and the UK this summer. The ship has been put into storage for the winter, and it will complete its voyage to Gaza, or at least attempt to do so next year. This is the sixth mission. Every single one has ended with Israeli forces boarding the vessel forcibly in international waters, confiscating the ship, forcing people into Israel, detaining them for a period of time, and then deporting them after forcing them to go into the country they didn't want to go into. So frankly, that's likely going to be the outcome again next year. I hope not, but it still is a mission that has to be done because we need to draw the world's attention to the suffering, the terrible suffering of the Palestinian people. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So I did that. And the other thing, I took the opportunity because the segment that I did in the summer was from Gothenburg, Sweden to Oslo. And then I decided to go to Poland because I wanted to see with my own eyes how the Ukraine war was affecting that country. And I was there for 5 days and we can get into that if you want, Regis, but the short version is that I was astonished at how little the country seemed to be affected by the Ukraine war. I saw no Ukrainian flags. I didn't encounter any Ukrainian refugees, although I know a great many of them are there somewhere. I didn't encounter any people speaking Ukrainian. I didn't see any military assets. I went to the border of Ukraine and Poland. I was within a couple of kilometers driving north to south along the Ukrainian-Poland border. I saw nothing but farmland, no military forces, nothing. It was quite surprising. The only evidence I saw of anything going on unusual was at a border checkpoint just east of the city of Chelm in Poland. There was this incredibly long line of cargo trucks. It was lining up to get into Ukraine. It was some 12 kilometers long, and there were over 420 trucks waiting to be vetted at the border. And I didn't see any trucks coming into Poland from Ukraine, driving along that stretch of highway, which is quite striking. It was sort of, an example of how profoundly dependent Ukraine has become upon aid from the West, I thought. But that was it. I saw no evidence whatsoever of Poland's being affected by this war.
Can I say something kind of because that's a good segue for something I want to talk about? If that's
it's your show. Take it away.
Well, so I had the opposite experience in Russia in regards to Ukrainian refugees. So I had a very interesting experience. So as I said, I flew into Tallinn, Estonia, and then took a bus to St. Petersburg, which should take 6 hours. But I was held in Russian customs for maybe 5 hours. I think they were baffled as to what this American was doing trying to cross by land from Estonia into Russia at this moment. They were very nice to me. But here's what's interesting about that experience. It ended up being actually a very educational part of my trip because I noticed, so they put us in a classroom. It literally was a classroom with little desks and stuff. So I felt like a little kid, but there were a lot of other people in there with me. And I noticed everyone else had a blue passport like me because the American passport is blue. But then I noticed, but there's no other Americans in here. What else? What's this other blue passport? It's a Ukrainian passport. They were all going to emigrate to Russia, and they were being processed through. And again, there were families doing this, and the Russian customs people were very nice to them. And in fact, one guy who, had questioned me about why I was going to Russia, and he said he was with the Secret Service of Russia. He said, yeah, we treat them like human beings, but, this is not the sense we get in the West that, there's Ukrainians who actually want to live in Russia. In fact, at least the numbers that I've seen is that there's more Ukrainian refugees that have gone to Russia since 2014 than have gone to any other country. Because a lot of times you'll hear Poland is the bigger number. I think it's pretty close, Poland and Russia. But the point is over 1 million at least Ukrainians have emigrated to Russia. I've heard 2 million even. I've heard much more than that. But again, just to be conservative, I've certainly seen well over 1 million that have gone there and done so voluntarily because they feel that that is their home, right? And especially if they're from the east of Ukraine, if they're from the Donbass, for example, that would be natural for them to feel, part of Russia. Now, the other interesting thing in Donetsk is you also don't see Ukrainian flags. You see Russian flags. Of course, the people in Donetsk, along with 3 other republics, voted in September of 2022 to join Russia. And of course, in the West, we hear, oh, well, that referendum was forced by the Russians and it wasn't valid, etc. But it clearly, to me, reflects what people want, right? You see a lot of Russian flags hanging from people's homes, for example. And by the way, you don't see a lot of Russian troops. It does not feel like an area under occupation. I should say that, right? You see a lot of policemen, but these are police that work for the Donetsk, the Donetsk government. They're not from Russia. And I've now spent a total of almost 2 weeks in Donetsk between my November trip and my recent trip. Traveled from the far east to Donetsk to the far west. And during that time, maybe I went through 4 checkpoints, maybe 5 in all that time. And never were we stopped. We just wave and you go through. So again, and that was not in the cities. That was between cities, right? Within the city of Donetsk, you could be there for a few days and not have no idea war was going on from your eyes, from what you see and what you hear. Although you will hear shelling and that sort of thing. But you don't see troops. You don't feel that the Russians are there occupying it. And that's why there's no Western reporters there, because the reality is something that they can't accept, and that is that the people there are not being occupied. The vast majority are glad the Russians are there, and they feel protected by the Russians, and that a lot of the troops fighting there are from that region. That is to say, yes, there are Russian troops there fighting, but they're fighting alongside people from Donetsk that are defending themselves, So anyways, I wanted to say that, but I thought, Dimitri, that was a good segue into my.
I do want to echo one thing you said, Dan. It's very important. I've been to the West Bank 4 times, and I've been to Crimea. I didn't get to Donetsk, and I hope to be able to visit one day. And I saw nothing in Crimea that remotely resembled what I saw on the West Bank on every occasion. There are checkpoints everywhere. At every checkpoint in the West Bank, there are heavily armed Israeli soldiers in combat gear. The Palestinian people are made to line up, to pass from one community to the other, for hours at a time. They're frisked, they're harassed. That's an occupation. I've seen an occupation, and it's absolutely suffocating and oppressive. I saw nothing like that in Crimea. I didn't see that in Yalta when I visited your community, Regis. I didn't see that in Simferopol. I didn't see that in Sebastopol. I didn't see that driving around Crimea. It bore absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to the occupation of the West Bank.
No, that's a good point. And Crimea is absolutely placid. I mean, Crimea, I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but especially Yalta feels like a paradise. I mean, far from feeling occupied. I was looking at real estate when I was down there. I mean, that's a beautiful place to be. And again, there's no sense that people feel oppressed it's incredible. Again, the view that we get in the West, about things. By the way, if people haven't seen it, just, in connection with what's going on in the West Bank, the movie The Gift is incredible. The Present, I believe it's called, is an amazing 20-minute dramatic movie about a checkpoint in West Bank that I would urge people to watch. You will bawl your eyes out. It was nominated for an Oscar award, and quite legitimately so. But yeah, there's nothing like that. There's no analog to that in either Crimea and then not in Donetsk either.
Yeah. It has been very peaceful here in Yalta. But as you well know, The bridge has been attacked twice successfully. We in Crimea have been undergoing multiple daily drone attacks, both aerial and marine, but not anything near Crimea. Now, Sevastopol has, that's the port of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. We've been there a couple of times, and a couple of times for events, and never heard anything. But I have to tell you, it's a vibrant city. Life goes on as it always has. I saw one armed soldier with a AK-47 or whatever the Russians have, but he was guarding the front of an embassy or a government building. You don't see him anywhere out in the streets at all. We do see convoys of Russian trucks carrying troops, equipment. The Z and the V are painted on them, but that's in Sevastopol area. In Simferopol, I've never seen them, and in Yalta, absolutely never. All right, I want to change gears here because I'd like your opinion on what I think is a really huge geopolitical story, the BRICS. They just finished their meeting in South Africa. They've accepted new members. I don't think this can be talked about enough because people are focused on the war in Ukraine, NATO, the EU, and now China. The United States is trying to get, South Korea and Japan and Australia all militarized to go against China. But at the same time, on this geopolitical level, this different kind of world is emerging. Dimitri, I'm going to go to you first. What are your thoughts on BRICS, this whole idea of a new movement, and I think it is a movement, and where do you think it's going, Dimitri?
Well, the thing that I find most striking about the BRICS, and I think that the BRICS is part of an absolutely momentous and historic movement away from unipolar hegemony to multipolarity. And it's happening at breathtaking speed, and it's awesome to behold, to see this change happening on such a scale so quickly. But what has always struck me about the BRICS is the extraordinary diversity, in every sense of the word, of the BRICS relative to its Western counterpart, the G7. The G7, with the exception of Japan, is Western European economies plus two countries that were colonized by Western Europeans, Canada and the United States, and all of them have highly similar economic systems. With the exception of Japan, they're all linguistically, culturally, historically very similar. The political systems are very similar. It's a high degree of homogeneity. But the BRICS is extraordinarily diverse by contrast. You have China, a massive country with a huge industrial base led by a communist party that has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in the last several decades. You have India, which is not even remotely capitalist. It's a relatively right-wing government. I'm sorry, not even remotely communist. It's, of course, quite capitalist. High levels of poverty still. Then you have now entering two fundamentalist Muslim governments, which have their own economic organization, namely Saudi Arabia and Iran. You have Brazil, which is currently led by a left-leaning president, Lula, and a secular government. And then you have Russia, which is what I would regard as a system of state capitalism, which is, led by a government that is deeply committed to the Russian Orthodox Church. How is it that these countries, with such extraordinary linguistic, historical, economic, political diversity, have come together? What is the glue? The glue that holds them together is an absolute, implacable determination to bring to an end the era of Western hegemony. And as long as those countries, with all of their massive resources, with their industrial capacity, with their technological sophistication, are determined to trade with each other and to work with each other in a politically cooperative manner, no matter what pressure may be applied upon them by the West, I think the West is doomed. at least the Western era of hegemony is over. To me, it's just a matter of time before they have to come to that realization. This is a momentum that cannot be stopped. And the question really for us living in the West is, are governments going to have the sense to give up their aspirations for global domination? And that really comes down to whether the United States government will have the sense to do that. Or are they going to try to take us down with them? I mean, and there are people within the US government and other Western governments, including the Canadian government, frankly, who seem quite willing to imperil the future of humanity if that's what they feel is necessary in order to maintain the world domination which Western European countries and their progeny have effectively exercised for centuries. I'm hopeful that eventually these people are going to come to their senses, these so-called leaders of the West, and are going to realize that their future, the future of their peoples, lies in moving away from a competitive model of domination to a cooperative model globally and internationally, and respecting the sovereignty of other states, while at the same time, of course, insisting that their own sovereignty be respected. That's the future for the West. And the only question is, are the clowns and the charlatans who currently lead us going to come to their senses and realize that that's the only path forward for us?
Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I can't say it much better than Dimitri. I mean, I think he really explained it well. I mean, the interesting thing or the irony is that the U.S. in particular has guaranteed the existence of the BRICS through its own actions. That is, through its own attempt to maintain hegemony, it has lost hegemony, right? Its attempt to control the world has caused it to lose control and to force these countries into alliance with each other, to have their own ways of trading with each other, eventually not to have to depend on the U.S. dollar, because the U.S. has wielded the dollar in a way to try to bully other countries and to impoverish countries that don't comply with U.S. demands. And so these countries, which represent a huge proportion of the world's humanity and a huge portion of the world economy, are now uniting to find a different path and to find, a different pole in the world to get away from this unipolar world that the U.S. really has controlled since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. And again, the U.S. has so misused its power to start wars of choice all over the world that the world is rebelling now. And that's what the BRICS represents. It's the world that's rebelling.
Yeah, the other interesting thing, they don't have this organizational structure and a charter and rules. They're solving it all. Really, it's like basic democracy, discussing, trying to come to consensus without the acrimony, without the polemics, without the conflict, but all seeking to find a better way through a completely different model or paradigm of how to deal with each other. Dimitri expressed it really very well. I'm inclined to believe that this war in Ukraine, and I don't call it a proxy war, it's a war of the United States against Russia, been going on for decades. The goal is to take down Russia, but this has accelerated this process tremendously, I think, because a combination of the sanctions that the U.S. has imposed on Russia that have backfired, they blew up the pipeline, and there really is little doubt it's about who really was behind it, forcing all of Europe really into recession. Economies are collapsing. And I think you'll agree with me, I think the rest of the world is looking at this and saying, we don't want any part of that. And this is what we're describing as United States hegemony. All right, I want to shift gears with the time that we have left. I don't cover United States domestic news, really at all. I like to get sometimes some feedback on what the American people are feeling from friends that I have, and most of them are in the peace movement. Most of them are, very involved in alt media like we are. But I want to ask you this, Dan. I'll start with you first this time. The people here in Russia, they're not talking about it a lot, but they know that the Biden family is up to no good. What I'm reading is that Hunter Biden's laptop contained, I don't know, thousands of references to deals that were made and names that they have. And the FBI had it all. And it all points to Joe, the big guy. And the firing of the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Burisma, where Hunter was employed. What are your thoughts on what the heck is going on in the United States with this Hunter Biden thing and the FBI trying to conceal all of this for the last 2 or 3 years? Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, clearly, and we know that is what happened. We know that when the Hunter Biden computer surfaced, and remember how it surfaced. I mean, it was just, Hunter Biden had taken it in to have it fixed, by a computer geek, and never came back for it. And the guy figured out what was on it. And he, if my recollection is correct, actually, I believe he sent it to authorities right away because he knew something was shady on it. And the FBI knew full well that this was Hunter Biden's laptop, that what was on it was real, and that what was on it was damning to Hunter Biden and his father, Joe Biden, who at that time was running for president of the United States. And not only the FBI, but other intelligence departments, agencies signed a letter saying this is fake, knowing that it was real. And the media went along with that, didn't ask any questions, and Joe Biden was elected. If you want to talk about election interference, that's election interference. Had the truth about that laptop been made known during the 2020 elections, I think it's safe to say that Joe Biden would not have won the election. So clearly the intelligence agencies are in the tank for Biden. The media, for the most part, is in the tank for Biden. And we continue to see that. I mean, if you look at, we talked before we went live with this podcast that, and if you look at what's happening to Trump, for example, he's being indicted for having taken classified documents with him when he left office. Well, meanwhile, Joe Biden, we know, had classified documents at his house, in his Corvette, in fact, were found. He's not being indicted. You see a very partisan justice system, if you can even call it that, operating here to try to, again, guarantee that Biden's going to win and that Trump's going to lose. And whatever you feel about, we talked again before we went live, I'm not a fan of Trump, but at the same time, I am concerned what this does to what's left of the U.S. democratic system when you selectively go after one guy to destroy his campaign and you don't go after the other guy. Now, I do think Biden's days of impunity are numbered. I do think there's more and more stories coming out about his family's misdeeds. I think it's going to be very hard to keep that under wraps between now and November of 2024 when the elections are. So we'll have to see. But I think this looks very bad for U.S. democracy. The U.S. starts wars around the world claiming that we're doing so to defend democracy. Now, the three of us on this call know that that's just, ridiculous and not true. But, you know, I think a lot of people believe that, but I think that that is now, you know, impossible to believe anymore because we don't even have a democratic system here. And this is exposing all of this. I mean, we, you know, again, the U.S. also talks about other countries and other countries' corruption and the corruption of their oligarchs. Well, we have a very corrupt oligarchical class. And I would say in terms of dollar amount, I don't think any other country could compete with our corruption, you know, because I think the corruption in this country amounts to trillions and trillions of dollars. And so, you know, the sooner people realize that, the better.
All right. I think I have to agree with you on the level of corruption in the United States. I think it's unparalleled. Dimitri, your thoughts? Now, you're Canadian. You're living in Greece. You've traveled the world. You worked as a really high-powered attorney for a number of years in New York City and in, I think it was Paris. What are your thoughts on what's happening south of the border from where you were born in Montreal?
Well, you know, we Canadians, like 90% of the population lives within 100 kilometers of the U.S. border. And if you watch our television, it's probably the vast majority of the programming available in Canada is coming from the United States. So the way I put it is we have a front row view on what's transpiring in the United States at any given point in time. And in fact, we are profoundly affected by it. And we're like, sometimes they call Canada like the 51st state, but we're not even that because we don't get to vote in elections that have a profound impact on our country. Absolutely profound. From my perspective, sitting there looking south, I am absolutely gobsmacked by what I'm watching. I could not agree more with what Dan just said about this was flagrant interference in the 2016 election. Dozens of so-called intelligence professionals, people at the top, at the apex of the U.S. security establishment, knowing that this was the real deal, the Hunter Biden laptop, characterized it. I think the formulation they used was it had the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they not only lied through their teeth about the thing being fake or implying that it was fake, they pointed the finger at Russia. I mean, as they always do. And it's amazing that the mainstream media in the United States spends so much time talking about foreign government interference when its own security apparatus is flagrantly right in front of our eyes, quite probably altering the outcome of the 2020 election. It was, you know, they just basically stole the election from Trump. I have absolutely no respect for Trump whatsoever. If you looked at my social media commentary during the 4 years that he was the president, I was constantly berating the man. And my negative opinion about him hasn't changed. But the fact of the matter is, the election was stolen from him. And if you care about democracy in the United States, that should upset you, whatever your opinion about Trump may be. And in terms of these indictments, I mean, one of them, they're criminalizing, as I understand it, Trump's contesting the legitimacy of the 2020 election. Now, that reminds me, wasn't that precisely what Hillary Clinton did in 2016? Didn't she falsely allege, didn't she lie through her teeth and claim that the Russian government hacked the election, that Trump was colluding with Vladimir Putin, that he was just a puppet of Vladimir Putin, and that if it wasn't for Russian government interference, he would have won? That's precisely what she did. And the media, you know, took that ball and played with it for some 3 to 4 years until the Mueller investigation revealed that this was all a hoax. And even more revelations have come out since then. This was just basically a concoction of the Hillary Clinton campaign. Nobody's indicted Hillary, and she's still going on and on about this with complete and utter impunity. This is a real, I think, it's a nail in the coffin of whatever remains of democracy in the United States. I mean, there never, certainly in my lifetime, has been much of a democracy. It's been slowly eroding over the years. And not that there's much in my country either, believe me, either in Canada or in Greece. You know, it's arguable whether either of those countries constitutes a democracy now. But certainly in the United States, I think it's over. And unless the American people rise up, and I hope that our brothers and sisters in the United States can succeed in doing that, coming together and realizing that both of these parties are oppressing them. That unless they break the stranglehold of Republican Democrat power, they will not have democracy. The one other thing I want to say about this shocking levels of corruption about the Biden administration, you mentioned that I was a securities lawyer, and I worked on Wall Street for a few years. One of the things that strikes me about the revelations regarding Hunter Biden and this Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, was the quantum of compensation they were paying him to serve on the board. As I understand it, was nearly $1 million a year. That number really stood out for me because I spent years suing directors and officers of public companies, including some Fortune 500 companies, and I'd never seen, just sort of your run-of-the-mill board member being paid anywhere near that much money. And I recently checked, and there was a report that came out on the average director compensation for Fortune 500 companies. I believe it was in the range of $350,000 a year. These are Fortune 500 companies. This guy was earning nearly $1 million a year. He had absolutely no expertise whatsoever in energy. And at the time when he was serving on the board for this extraordinary level of compensation without having any qualifications to do this job whatsoever, the Ukrainian prosecutor was investigating this company for corruption. And Joe Biden, I mean, it's amazing the man gets away with what he does because he's so open about it. He's so arrogant and public about his criminality. He was bragging about the fact that he told Poroshenko that if he didn't fire this prosecutor who was investigating the company that was paying his son obscene sums of money for doing probably nothing, that he was going to withhold or cause the IMF to withhold $1 billion loan to Ukraine. He bragged about it. There's video evidence of this all over. I mean, I'm not a constitutional expert, but this strikes me as a slam dunk case of impeachment. And nobody in the United States Congress seems to want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. They impeached Donald Trump for a lot less. He was trying to get the dirt on Joe Biden and, was pressuring Zelensky to do that. And for that, they impeached the man. I mean, this is far worse as far as I can tell. Well, maybe there's something else you and I should chat about while we're waiting for Regis to come back. By the way, what's your next adventure in life?
Oh, well, I was invited to go to China in November, so I'm going to do that. And I've never been to the Far East, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's great. You know, are you going to try to get into Xinjiang by any chance?
I don't. I think I'm going to Beijing, and I'm going there for the World Peace Council. I'm on the board of the U.S. Peace Council. My guess is that I'll probably. Usually they make you come in and out for that. I'm not sure I'm going to get a lot of chances to leave Beijing. So actually, if I could do anything, I'd love to go take a train to North Korea. That would be pretty amazing. But I don't know if that's going to happen. So the details are yet unknown. So, but I'm pretty excited. How about you?
Actually, I'm going to try to go. I was just invited to go by the Chinese embassy to Tibet and to another part of China that I hadn't heard of before, but I couldn't do it in September. So I'm going to try to go in January and February, and I do want to go to Xinjiang and see myself how the Uyghurs are faring in that part of the country. And I too would love to go to North Korea. Do you have any idea how to get in there? Is it even?
I don't know. I know people who've done it. I could find out, but I don't know how to do it.
Well, if you do figure out, how to do it, please let me know because I would very much like to visit the country.